Hello everyone and welcome. If you've ever done interpretation or project management on, for example, a museum or heritage exhibition or anything like that, you will know that very often you will have much more content than you will have space or opportunity to display it or tell all the different stories that you have been researching. Very often, if you're working with researchers or historians, designers, whoever it might be, people who can provide content, you will know that whenever you research an aspect of a story, you basically just open more doors and find more stories and more interesting perspectives on your main story. And it all feels very important. You know you can't incorporate all of it in your exhibition or in your activity, in your interpretation or storytelling, so you have to be very selective, but it's also a shame to waste it all because a lot of work has gone into doing exhibitions or doing interpretation projects. There are lots of ways where you can make really good use of your story and of your research, of all your findings. It doesn't have to require a big budget or an awful lot of time. Sometimes just a little bit of creativity and a little bit of thinking outside the box can actually get you very far. And it's also a really good way of finding out what your visitors or your audiences want. It's not always easy to figure out which aspects of a new story or a new piece of interpretation will be the ones that attract most attention from your audiences. But when you experiment with different ways of telling that story, different platforms, you also find out more about what it is your audience want around a story, and that can be really good info to use in the next projects that you're putting up. As always, if you like the content of these videos, please remember to like them, subscribe to the channel and add your comments below. So let's dive into a few things that can be really good to have a think about when you want to expand your content and make the best use of all the wonderful stories and research you've gathered. First of all, think about events programs. A lot of museums especially, but also cultural institutions do this already. You can have a series of talks and lectures and activities and all sorts of things where you can make good use of your content, especially of the content that might not have made it to your sort of main exhibition or main interpretation. Also workshops online and on site, that's a brilliant way of putting practical perspectives on something into people's minds, especially if it has to do with various craftsmanships or ways of doing things, practical perspectives of setting something up. Webinars and lectures, always a really good one. You can do series, you could do one-off webinars. Invite people in, either people you have been working with or external experts. It's a wonderful way of actually letting those researchers who've done a lot of work on your interpretation or your exhibition, the one you've been project managing, for example, let them talk and let them have a say and let them share their perspectives and their work. Publications, it can be anything from books to smaller leaflets. These might require a bit of a budget from time to time, but it can be a really good thing to have that can go hand in hand with, for example, an exhibition, and it also gives you something to sell effectively. Think about games and interactives as well, not just as part of, for example, an exhibition, but also as part of your online offers, for example, or maybe as part of apps you offer. Educational programs, think about your schools, adult education programs, stuff like that. There are a lot of really useful content that can often be you can use really in educational programs as well, and to put focus on learning activities, again both within, for example, an exhibition or your main storytelling activity, but also as separate or individual activities. Social media content is a really interesting one because A lot of the time you can actually create, for example, historic series with follow-ups. So create posts that allows for certain aspects of your main story to be told. And this is really where you can dive into some of the things that you might not have space for in your main interpretation activity. Images, photos, stuff like that. Be creative really on your social media content. You can reach a lot of people there. Volunteer programs as well. What can volunteers contribute with? Do you have volunteers who might already know something about this subject? Have they been part of setting up the exhibition and so on? What can they contribute with, and how can you use volunteer programs to maybe attract more volunteers around this subject? Tours, of course, that's an obvious one. Dramatized tours as well as guided tours, self-guided tours and so on. It can be via QR codes and stuff like that. Again, be creative here. Also do competitions. It can be for children as well as adults. It can be online, it can be as part of your main exhibition, whatever you have put up. But they're always a fun way of sparking people's curiosity around something. One of the things that's really good about these things is that it gives you a sense of where the interest is and what gets the most attention. And it gives you an opportunity to prioritize these and make them a priority for the next exhibition or project. Obviously, you won't be able to do all of these things and to put content into all of these things all the time. But if you experiment a bit with where you can use your extra content or content that didn't make it into your main exhibition or main interpretation event, then you'll also get a much bigger feel of what visitors feel attracted to and where they want to engage and how they want to engage. So it can actually be quite beneficial to everyone to try and expand your sort of platforms in terms of what can we do with all this content. And as I said, most of the time, in fact, probably all the time, you will have a lot of extra research, a lot of extra stories that you really want to tell, but you might not have space or room or possibilities for it. So be creative about what you can do with it, and involve audiences, visitors, wherever you can, because that's really where the sort of true dialogue starts. Do you want to add anything to this list? Have you any experiences around what works for you? What have you done with like creative content, and how have you made good use of it? Then please do share.